All right, thanks for checking in with the channel. I assume if you're watching this, you're interested in the concrete mixer. But you probably want to subscribe to my channel. I got a bunch of other DIY projects. Usually, they're all low budget things, showing you how to do things cheap, easier, faster, cheaper is what I'm always looking for. So the other project I am going to post on is my dump trailer made out of basically scrap. And let's talk about the mixer. The mixer is pretty much made out of scrap as well. All right, so here is the big cement mixer, and yeah, thought I'd give you some tips on how I built it. I mean, it's mostly built out of free scrap stuff, and this is version 2 of this thing. The first one I used quite a bit, and then it kind of broke, so I spent some time fixing it. And you know, the as you can see, this is quite a big barrel. I just finished pouring this concrete out here, and it was about 4 yards worth. And you can see that this is the back of a 55-gallon drum, so it's quite a bit bigger than that. And unlike a lot of mixers you load from the front, I built a window, I don't know, a hatch, and you can see this has been used quite a bit. And but you can see the paddles. I've seen other people build them where they put the paddles right up against the walls of the barrel, and that's a bad idea, because this is what happens, is that everything kind of builds up right up against it. So that's why I would do it this way, where you just got one sitting out, so it doesn't everything doesn't kind of stick. And the other important thing is you really need to have a sloped front. I built this is my second concrete mixer. I built another one that used a 30-gallon plastic drum. It was a much smaller one, and I won't go into too much detail on that, but it was just the barrel. And it ends up without a taper in the front, it ends up kind of flying out of it when you start to dump it, and that's not a good idea. So the other thing about that a regular barrel is that it has a squared back, and everything collects in the corner. It doesn't get mixed, and that's why when I built this one, I put a taper on there. I mean, ideally you'd have the whole thing rounded off, but that's not quite a DIY thing. You're building a one-off. You're not going to go to all that trouble. But that does the job. I mean, you can see in here that even still, I get some stickage on the back, but it was nothing like my first one where you had a squared off barrel. Basically, I ended up filling in the squared. All right. So the major issue with these things is getting the gear ratio right. And most of the motors run at AC motors run at 3,600 RPM, and so if you want the barrel to spin about 10 or 20 RPM. So even if you found, there are some AC motors that run at 1,800, 4-pole ACs that run at 18. So you still need 100 to 1 gear ratio. And so the old school mixers, which I just bought another one because I'm going to make a new smaller one. But they have a gear that goes around the outside, and they've got a tiny little pinion. and that, you know, that might give it a 10-to-1 ratio, and then they use a motor with a belt that gives it another 10-to-1 ratio. So 10 times 10 is 100, so you get a 100-to-1 ratio. And you know, that's the way they used to do them. And if you look at the brand new mixers these days, at least the more expensive one, not the super cheap ones which do it the old way. They have a gear, a planetary gear that drives the drum directly, and they get the 100-to-1. And in fact, my first motor, my first cement mixer, my 30-gallon plastic drum, I used a winch motor. And you know, a winch motor already has an internal gearing to spin it very slowly. You know, I think it goes like 10 RPM, which is a little bit slow. But that's what I used on my 30-gallon drum. And problem with those winches is they're really noisy. If you get a bigger one, they're pretty quiet, but the smaller ones are really noisy, the ones from Harbor Freight. So what I was gonna try and take the automatic transmission and serialize all of the gears in it, and I took one all apart and tried to figure it out, and it just wouldn't work. But still, you using the automatic transmission, you have the final you know, the differential gear, which is like 3.5-to-1, and then I have it in first gear, which is like 3-to-1. I think it's actually in reverse, which is a little more gear. But you know, 3-to-1 and 3.5-to-1, you get about a 10-to-1 gear, and so I still needed another 10-to-1. And what I used the first version of this motor is, and I ended up getting an industrial gear reduction unit, and I had a winch motor, 5 horsepower winch motor, and that powered that. But eventually that broke. Yeah, this sat for a long time, and I hadn't used it for a while, many years in fact, and after it stopped working, and I think the motor brushes wore out. So this time I happened to get some free wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, and that's what this is. This is an electric wheelchair motor. You know, you have 2 of them, one on each side, and basically this already has a gear inside, so it reduces this is a 24-volt motor, and I think it runs at 3,000 RPM. The motor itself, and then it drives it down to, you know, I'm not even sure. But it's perfect. So it must be like 10-to-1, because we get the 10-to-1 in here, and I get 100-to-1, and this thing spins at about 20 RPM or so. So the only thing I don't like about this wheelchair motor is that it runs on 24 volts. And I mean, I wanted something to run on. My previous one used the 5 horsepower winch motor, and it ran off of a single 12-volt battery, and that way you could just, you don't need power wherever you're mixing and dumping. Because I mean, one of the things that I really wanted in my mixer is that I wanted to locate it right where it's going to dump. I mean, a lot of people seem to mix and dump it into a wheelbarrow and then take the wheelbarrow to where they're going to put it. I wanted this thing to be right where it needs to be. So I have these, you know, big wheels, and you can just pick it up and roll it. Unfortunately, I tried towing this on the highway, and that's not a good idea, and it broke. This wheel came off because these are front-wheel drive hubs. This you can see. Let's see. This front hub and wheels were from Ford I don't know what I can't remember now, but basically it's front wheel drive, and so I just took the hubs, and you can almost see this is where the strut came up through, and I just welded them onto this to that axle, which was same as that piece of metal. It's from a rack, a rack shelf, and so it doesn't have the shaft, the drive shaft CV joint going through the bearing, which it really needs. But I didn't really care about it. I shouldn't have towed it on the street. That was a bad idea. Ended up breaking it. So I kind of bolted it back together so at least it will roll. That really needs to be fixed, but I probably won't fix it. So that the transmission is extremely strong. I mean the front hub and the transaxle can handle an enormous amount of weight, so it really could handle filling this thing up. This is, when I was doing this stuff, I put basically 5 cubic feet in, which is about a quarter or a fifth of a yard, and I used to put in like a half a yard. You could fit a half a yard in here, but the motor would end up getting too hot. My 5 horsepower, the first version. This one, I don't think it would have a chance to do that. It strains a little bit, even on the quarter yard. But it works. So the other thing is, when you tilt it down, and all of the weight is sort of back here, it's a lot harder for it to lift it, because that's what's happening when it's spinning. It's lifting up all of the weight. But once you level it out and it sort of spreads out, then it can handle more weight. So that's the other thing. The other feature is that you need to be able to raise and lower the drum, and so I just used a jack because it's too heavy to do it by hand. There's just no way. Even a quarter yard, it probably weighs 1,000 pounds. So you can't pick this thing up by hand. So originally I was using a floor jack, and that was just too much of a pain, especially because you can't lift it up high enough, on a single jack pump. You have to, jack it up and put something under it, and then use an extension and, jack it up even more. So what I came up with was this simple mechanism where you can see I have a worm gear winch, and it's connected to this cable, and that cable loops around and pulls this lever with a wheel on it. And the more you pull it, here I can show you. When you pull it, it basically pulls in the lever and raises the back. So even with 1,000 pounds in here, it's pretty easy to raise it up. So that's how I dump it. I'll just keep cranking this baby. And the only problem with this mechanism is that you can't lower it all the way down, because there's no leverage once you get it down. There's no angle left as you move it down. So after I put this on there, I kind of use the floor jack to raise it up just enough to get this thing to work. But what I've done, and what I did here when I poured concrete here, see, that's about as far as I want to go down, because it's just going to snap up. But really, that's enough to get it this this level. In fact, it's tilted down a little bit, so that's good. But what I did on when I was pouring the foundation for an addition is that I raised the front wheels. I put these wheels up on blocks so it doesn't have to tilt down all the way to pour it all out. So that way I also didn't need to drop it down as much. And that's what I did here. I just basically, once it's, it just pours into this. So the other change I made when I fixed this is that I moved the drum back. The wheels were riding on here, this area, and you can see that I welded in some additional steel to try and fix it, because it was just, it was denting this metal pretty badly, and it was not concentric around, so it would basically, and it's still not. When you run it, you can see that it moves up and down, and that was also a problem here, because originally, even though I used this, I had this fixed. So when the drum moved up and down, it was kind of stressing this piece, and that was one of the fixes I did. Is that you can see that it's just got a single bolt holding it in, and now it'll pivot. So it'll go like this. It'll pivot on here, allowing this drum to move up and down without breaking anything. I mean, originally I had a spare tire wheel hub, and I had it bolted, the studs coming out here that bolted onto a wheel. I had it bolting onto a wheel, the center hub of a wheel, and I just tore that center hub up. But now I screwed it back so this is bolted directly to the drum. And as you can see in here, I've got the bolts holding it on, and I sealed all that stuff up, so there's no leaks out of there. The problem that really needs to be fixed is there are leaks that come out of here. So I have this rubber pad, pretty dense rubber pad, and I put that in there like that, and put it on here, and then I screw this down. And sometimes it works well, but when it's a really watery mix, it just pours out of there pretty good. Any tiny little gap will let water out. So originally I was gonna put in screws. I had like studs coming out, and that was way too much of a pain. I needed something that was simple, so I changed it to use this. And I've got this nut, this big nut that holds it in, and gloves on, you can get a good tighten down on it. But you really kind of want like an ice cream thing where it just kind of clamps, and maybe does it here and here and here, 3 of them that you just kind of clamp them, slap them down, But again, if you were going to try and use this every day, you'd fix it like that. But when you use it maybe 4 times a year. But if you happen to, that's the tip though. If you're going to build one, and you might see if you can find some way to do that. I mean, most cement mixers, they just load them from the front, and with the tapered front, you can put stuff in there, and then it will fall down. But to do that, you really need it to be tilted up quite a bit, and as I mentioned, you need a different mechanism in the back if you're going to change the tilt, if you're going to try and drop this all the way to the ground. All right, well, I think that about covers everything on the cement mixer. I mean, the frame here was was, as you can see, it was a forklift, you know, a pallet jack. And I got free somewhere. And